Hi, and welcome to our session on economic growth and development policies. Remember, we did this topic last year. Now, economic growth and economic development are macroeconomic concepts that affect every South African. So, these two concepts are not the same, but they are closely linked. What you need to know is the difference between economic growth and economic development. Now, let's have a look at economic growth. Economic growth is going to look at an increase in a country's real gross domestic product, and it is measured by the increase in the production of goods and services over time. Economic development, on the other hand, looks at the increase in a country's real gross domestic product per capita over time. This is a process that concentrates on people's standard of living. So economic growth should lead to economic development. Now, in order to stimulate economic growth and development, we're going to look at two sides to this. We have the demand side approach and we're going to have the supply side approach. Now, let's first look at the demand side approach. The term demand side approach to growth and development is a policy that is going to focus on the aggregate demand that is created by households, your businesses, the government, as well as the foreign sector. So these are all the participants that appear on the circular flow. Now, the demand side is going to be used or is an important driving force in growing the economy. It's going to focus on expanding the aggregate demand for goods and services produced in the economy. Now, the first thing that the demand side policy is going to use to stimulate growth is the monetary policy. Now, remember that the monetary policy is going to be used in order to make sure that the supply of money is going to be constant in the economy. So, under the monetary policy, we're going to look at interest rate changes. This is usually used to influence the credit creation by making credit more expensive or cheaper. Now, the exchange rate is going to be used to stabilize the economy by means of increasing the interest rate or decreasing the interest rate. The next one that we have is our open market transactions. Now, in order to restrict credit, the South African Reserve Bank is going to sell securities. Now, when banks are going to buy these security, money is going to flow from the banks to the South African Reserve Bank. The banks have less money to lend, and this means that they cannot extend as much credit as before. This means they can't give out more loans as before. Now, in order to encourage credit creation, the South African Reserve Bank is going to buy securities. This means that the money is going to flow into the banking system. The next instrument under monetary policy is moral suasion. This is where the South African Reserve Bank is going to consult with other commercial banks in order to act in a responsible manner based on the prevailing economic conditions. So if we are facing a recession, this means that he will give instructions to our commercial banks such as Absa, Nedbank, FNB to lower their interest rate so businesses as well as households can take more credit in order to stimulate economic growth. If we are moving towards the boom phase or the prosperity phase, then the South African Reserve Bank is going to ask commercial banks to increase their interest rate so that people can take less loans and less credit. The last instrument is going to be a cash reserve requirement. This is where banks are required to hold a certain minimum cash reserve in the central banks. Now, banks have a limited amount to give out as credit because they need to take a percentage back to the South African Reserve Bank to hold it as a just in case type of money. So just in case your bank is going to face liquidity, there's excess money available that they can borrow at the South African Reserve Bank. Now, the higher the percentage increase in the cash reserve requirements by the South African Reserve Bank, it means that more of the bank's money is now going to go into the cash reserve requirements. And this is going to cause commercial banks to have less credit available to consumers or businesses. Another approach that government can use to stimulate demand in the economy is the fiscal policy. Remember that the main purpose of fiscal policy is stimulate macroeconomic growth and employment and to ensure that there's redistribution of wealth. So the following instruments are going to be used. The first one is going to be the progressive personal income tax. This means that the higher income earners are going to be taxed at a higher tax rate. So the higher you earn, the more tax you are going to contribute. Now, these taxes are going to be used to finance social development. So the poor are going to benefit more than those with higher incomes. Another instrument that is going to be used is what we call wealth taxes. Now, this is where you are going to buy property, and these properties you need to pay tax according to their market value. Now, transfer duties are going to be paid when properties are bought. Shares as well as bonds are also going to be taxed when they are traded. Your capital gains is also a form of wealth tax, and this is usually where we are going to sell capital goods, example, properties and shares. Your estate duties are also paid on the estates of the deceased, so you also need to pay tax on this. Another type of instrument under fiscal policy is the cash benefits. Now, your cash benefits are for your old age pensioners, disability grants, your child support, and unemployment insurance. Those are all cash grants. Now, these are also known as social security payments. The next one is the benefits in kind. Now, these include the provision of healthcare, education. These are your school meals as well as protection. When user fees are going to be charged, the poor or low income earners pay less or nothing for these goods. Now, limited quantities of free electricity and water are provided, especially to the poor. And then the next one is going to be your other redistribution. These are usually your public works program. Examples is your SIPs, your strategic integrated projects that are going to provide employment subsidies and other cash as well as financial benefits such as training, financing, and export incentives. The next one is your land restitution and land redistribution. Now, this is the return of land to those that have lost it due to discriminatory laws in the past. Your land redistribution is going to focus on land for residential and production for previously disadvantaged groups. Take note that residential is town and production, those could be your farms. Now, the money for these programs is going to be provided in the main budget. Your last instrument under the fiscal policy is going to be subsidies on properties. This is usually going to help people to acquire ownership of fixed residential properties. Example, this is where government is going to give housing subsidy schemes, especially to those people that are going to earn an income less than 3,500 per month. Another approach to stimulate economic growth and development is the supply side approach. So this approach is going to include anything that can influence the aggregate supply of goods and services, and with the focus on microeconomic components such as competition as well as potential output. Now, government intervention is going to aim to facilitate the smooth operation of markets in order to stimulate growth and development. The aim of supply-side approach is number one, the effectiveness and efficiency of markets. And this is going to require markets to operate more equitably and inclusively. So more blacks must be accommodated in the mainstream economy if it is to work efficiently. The next requirement is going to be business efficiency. Now, this means that taxes must be collected efficiently, capital formation must increase, as well as human resources must be supported in order to improve, and free advisory services must be made available so that businesses efficiently improves. Now, the last requirement in your supply side approach is going to be the cost of doing business. So this means that government must try to lower the cost of doing business, especially transportation, communication, and energy costs must decrease in order for us to have a competitive advantage globally. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time. Remember, guys, if you have any content-related questions, you can communicate with us on the following social media platforms.